All right, so we're trying something new, and hopefully it'll work this time. My apologies, folks. Last week was down in Indianapolis, and those outlets are tricky, and certainly was at the Hyatt Regency, and I had a dead outlet. So computer was running. By the time I could get it back up online, it was just too late. The YouTube Live had ended, but hopefully today, Lowe is set up at one of his many satellite offices from his business empire around the Central California area, while I am back home following my time in the Big Ten tournament. And we got a lot to get into, Lowe. Very excited. And I think the way we feel today compared to the way we felt when we were doing this last week is dramatically different. And I feel it from my social media engagements, and I'm sure you do as well, from all of your friends that were just dying for this team to address the interior offensive line. And up until this past weekend, they hadn't, and the bodies were drying up, and there were just a few names left, and you were wondering if you were going to end up without a seat in this game of musical chairs. And nope, tip of your cap to Joe Ortiz, to John Spanos, to Jim Harbaugh, and everybody, Chad Alexander, that put this in. I'm sure Chad had a big part of that because obviously he was part of the Joe Douglas front office that drafted Mekhi Becton. But, man, you feel so different today after that one. And as a guy, Lo, I'll flip it to you with this, as a guy that was such an integral part of one of the most devastating, if not the most devastating, rushing attack in the NFL for a number of years with UNLT back there. Just what it does to a team, to a roster, when you kind of know what your faults were last year. It was really bad in that playoff game, and then bang, you got a 6'8", 370-pound guy that played on the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles interior line, blocking for a 2,000-yard season for Saquon Barkley, walking through that door to line up next to Joe Alt.
Hey, you got to be just absolutely excited. It's crazy how the Chargers, they go through, and they're like, okay, what are they going to do? Are they going to hit it, though? And what do? They go right to the body. Body blow, body blow. You go out and bring in a guy that you know that's a road grader. You want those guys that are road graders going to get after you and make guys work for it. That's who Harbaugh is. Harbaugh's a guy that you know it. He wants to beat you up. He wants to punch you in the mouth. He wants to play action. He wants to be downhill. He went out and he said, look, I know what we need. That's the thing. All the people around speculating, we all say, God, we get the splashy player. Go get this. But they already know what they want. They already know what they're preparing. And that's what a lot of fans have to get used to and saying, look, this chef, he knows what he's doing. You just get him the ingredients that he needs, and he's going to get something a la last year, winning 11 games. This team and this organization and Harbaugh, one thing that everyone knows, the guy knows how to win if you get him what he needs.
Yeah, look, and I was a little off. My apologies. Mekhi Becton, not 6'8", 370. He's only 6'7", 365. So my apologies.
Okay, yeah.
Mount Mekhi, Mount Becton. He is a mountain, and right next to him is another mountain. So just think about that right side, and you look at last year and how much more effective they were running to the left side than the right side, and this certainly solves that problem. Now you can be effective both ways, and the idea of pairing Becton and Alt, these two massive, massive bodies next to one another against the power and the strength of Rashawn Slater, who is the strongest player on the roster, with Zion, who's right there with him when it comes to strongest player on the roster. And now it's coming together. And I think that's something that people need to remember is we get excited about Devontae Adams, about DK Metcalf, about the skill position players. And I get it. But you got to remember what this team wants to do. Like, this is what they want to do. Like, they came in and I remember sitting in that room and hearing the Hayden Hurst presser. Like, hey, we want teams to walk out of that game looking toward next week and saying, man, I don't know if I'm going to be ready to go next week. And it just didn't come to fruition. Like, they weren't able to do. They were early on. Remember, you think about those big runs in those first couple weeks where they were able to kind of pound their opponent into submission, and then in the fourth quarter they would get those long runs. But I don't think that identity was ever realized, and so that's that's what the $70 million or $90 million that they had. I think so many Charger fans were kind of tagging like, hey, all right, well, let's go realize the vision. Let's go get those bodies because they're out there so we can now have the guys that, like you said, Harbaugh needs and Greg Roman needs on the offensive side of the ball to play football the way they want to.
Oh, no question. And you got to realize now you got the short side, and Zion, and then you got the big side, the meaty side, the right side and left side. But what you have too is now you got to realize how many times you see balls get batted down when you have shorter offensive linemen. Now you got guys. It's going to help the running game too, because now when you're playing defense, you're taught to hit and you read. You read with your head, and now you can read eyes and hands, hats in the right spot. So now you're trying to look beyond them trees. You got two trees on that right side that guys it's going to be a problem. It's going to be harder for guys to bat down balls. It's going to be harder. But now when the runner's running, defense is trying to get and shed, and you can't see through some of that mass. So I think it helps you run game, passing game. It just gives you now high hats. Guys are going to have to try to look in the backfield, so you're playing higher on your toes. You can't play as low. So it gives you the defense. It gives them another facet to deal with. I love the way that Harbaugh builds, because we go out and people say, you think about when you go get those guys, those really high-end guys, and it's like Harbaugh says, I'm always going to build in the draft. Look at the way that he built. Look at McConkey, like you said. Look at this guy came out of nowhere. Look at the young guys. Look what you're talking about, Mullen. Look at these young guys that came out and played well, first, second-year guys. Those guys, you got to have the guys in the draft. You build in the draft. You go and get that veteran. You go get that leadership. You go get that in free agency. Look what Harbaugh's doing. He's not getting the guys that are high price or the guys that are prima donnas. He's getting guys that he knows are blue collar, that's tough, that's physical, that just want to play football. He says, this is the Harbaugh way. I'm not going to go get those guys that, hey, look at me, guys. It's nothing wrong with that. But Harbaugh understands I'm getting guys that are hungry, guys that have been cast away, guys that people think that the better days are behind them. And he goes out and he gets them, signs them with 1, 2, 3-year deal. Go look at the way that they're operating. I love what they're doing, but they build in the draft. That's what this team does.
Yeah, it's a great point, Lo, because that's sort of, I think what's always been the Baltimore way is they are going to build through the draft. They are going to draft well. They are going to get that second contract to their players that they've developed and built into Baltimore Raven type players. And I think that's what Joe Ortiz is trying to bring over here is that sort of philosophy of the way you build a successful team. And so Becton, but here's the thing about free agency. Free agency is a huge component of that, right? It's like you don't want to be hamstrung, or I should say you don't want to be either work, hamstrung or handcuffed going into the draft by having to draft for need. Like that's the last thing that you want, where you feel like, I'm trying to think the best way to put it. You feel like, oh, well, we weren't able to. So like, I'll get to this. Like, what do I think their number one priority is right now? Well, number one is explosiveness. You got to have explosiveness. This is a team by signing Najee Harris, by signing Mekhi Becton, all of that sort of stuff. Like that's the physical pound them into submission identity, right? But you still have to be able to take the top off of defense. You still have to open things up for Najee, not to face 8-man boxes every time. He's not an explosive back, so you need that box to be open because of the threat of something happening downfield. So I think that this is where free agency comes into play. Like, okay, now you got Mekhi Becton. Well, now we're not focused on we got to get Gray Zabel or Tyler Booker or Membu or whoever might be and maybe we have to trade up because we've got to address this interior offensive line at 22. Okay, now you're free of that. And you know what? And I'll just get into that Andre James signing as well, because I think, look, we've talked about this on the pod before. Bozeman is incredibly popular in that offensive line room. And I'll turn it over to you real quick, Lo, because you know it. Like, how important is – I don't think people understand how important chemistry is in an offensive line room and why it may be underrated as opposed to what's his PFF grade. And, look, I know Bozeman had a rough year last year pass block. I get that. But I do think it was always in the cards for him to come back, whether that be as your starting center, as somebody competing to be your starting center, or as a depth piece. And I think you need to make sure that room 5 fingers on a glove that it's working. And that was a big part of the Bradley Bozeman signing.
Oh, no question. Think about a guy like Corey Withrow, who didn't really play. You remember Corey? He was a long snapper. He could play guard. He could play center. You want those utility guys, and that's what you're talking about, these utility guys that you go and say, this guy can be a starter. He can play a backup. He's not a great player, but he's a good player. But what the greatness that makes him great is his ability to think, his ability to communicate. Like you're talking about, the 5 fingers on the glove. You being able to, hey, call whole leg and rip, list, and being able to point here. So you're helping other linemen. The center is so integral when you're talking about. So you might not be the best, but when you have the best guy that can communicate with the offensive lineman, that everyone's on the same page, because you don't want your multi-million-dollar quarterback getting hit because you didn't slide the right way and you got a free hitter coming off the end and blowing up your quarterback. You better have a center to be able to point, make sure who's the mic. Why are we sliding this? Why are we fanning this protection? Why are we doing? The center is the most smartest guy during there on the team. You look at those centers. Look at Nick Hardwick. I like Nick Hardwick, now offensive line coach there, because you know that center is very, very integral. I mean, him and the guard, butt to butt, they have their scooping up and doing those things. You got to have guys in unison, guys on the same page. It's so imperative that you have a good offensive line, but also that center. I think that guy is the glue, because if he does not make the right calls, the offensive line, I've been on teams that you don't have a center that knows exactly what to do, it can become a nightmare. At least you have a guy that doesn't have to be great, but he's good. And that's what you have.
Yeah, I think in the case of Bradley, it's exactly what you speak. He's a smart guy. He's the one that calls out all the protections. That's what Herbert likes. That's what they had with Lindsley when he was an all-pro level center, and when Herbert was experiencing all that great success. I think in the case of Bozeman, kind of what we're talking about is chemistry, right? It's the Saints game. Nathan Shepard tries to break Herbert's ankle, and what does Bose do? He tries to kill the guy. I mean, he tries to rip his head off, and that's the sort of stuff that goes a long way. Now, like we said, you could watch Charger games last year and recognize, okay, they got to figure something out here. They've got to figure something out on the interior. On tackles, all pros. Rashawn is in the conversation as the best left tackle in football. Alt, as a rookie, is already in the conversation as a top 5, top 3 right tackle in football. But the interior is where it got leaky, and you saw what Houston did. They just stacked up their pass rushers and came flying, on the inside. And that's what so many teams are doing now anyway. The Chargers did it with Joey Bosa when they would line him up inside of Khalil Mack and put him on the same side. Like, it's just too popular of a position for teams to take to not address it. And so by bringing in Andre James, I know it's not the biggest name, UCLA guy, been with the Raiders, but here's the picture I would paint. Last year for the Raiders was an abject failure. It was a disaster on so many levels, right? You have a new offensive coordinator in Luke Getsy that's brought in, an interim head coach that is elevated to a head coach that everyone was like, that rarely goes well. We all like AP, but man, you got a chance for maybe to go get Harbaugh, or you passed on Sean Payton, and all those sort of, that sort of thing was the conversation. And it was ugly. It was an ugly year. You had no quarterback in O'Connell or Minshew. From the moment it felt like from week 3 on, Devontae Adams was trying to force his way out of there. And you lost Josh Jacobs. You lost the identity of your offense was now gone. So let's rewind 2 years, even 3 years. And you got Josh Jacobs back there. Where'd Josh Jacobs go to school? Alabama. What do they run at Alabama? Gap, duo, power. What's Andre James doing? He's putting Josh Jacobs in the Pro Bowl. He's making Josh Jacobs an All-Pro. He's getting Josh Jacobs a $29 million deal with Green Bay, because they're playing to the strength of that offensive line, to what he does well, to the identity. And it was a similar identity under Josh McDaniels as they're going to have here. So a lot of times it's important to kind of not just look at what a mess it was in Las Vegas last year with the Raiders, and just kind of take a little bit of expand that focus, make it wider, and think about Najee Harris, Alabama, Josh Jacobs, Alabama. Let's run some power. Let's run dual. Let's run gap. Let's run. Hey, Najee, don't even look that way. Look
Right.
this way and let's
Right.
go. And that's where James comes into play, and why ultimately I think he'll end up being. I keep refreshing. I'm trying to find if they have the details on his contract yet to
Yeah.
suggest, is it a number that's significantly more than Bradley Bozeman's, indicating that this is likely your starter, or is it, in line with what Bozeman got and it's going to just be a straight up competition?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a competition. They're going to open. You got to keep that open door. That's just what you have to do, because that both those two guys are going to be on the team. And like you said, you got a Najee. He's one cut, get downhill. Hey, don't worry. My dad say, don't worry about that old mule going blind. Just hold the strings and pull the line. He gonna go ahead and disc. Just let that guy plow. And that's what you're trying to do. That's what you're trying to accomplish. As the Chargers. So I just like the concept and what they're doing and how they go about it. They don't let the noise and the media. Harbaugh just says, he and his staff, they say, let's stay the course. And that's what they're doing in free agency.
Yeah, and I think, what it also signals to me by bringing both of those guys back is the stuff that we were talking about at the Combine that Joe Ortiz mentioned when he had his scrum with the Charger beat writers about Zion moving to center. That's just, I think that's now off the table. The fact that you've signed two guys that have played center, yes, James was a tackle at UCLA, but he's been a center the last 4 years. You've got Bozeman, who's been a center the last 5 years, even though he was a guard in Baltimore when he was drafted. Like, that's just a lot of, like you said, what goes into that position, how important that position is from an identify and attack and make sure everyone's on the same page on the offensive line. I think it now, put Zion back at left guard, and it's Slater, Zion, Bozeman. I know it's mirrored, so I should do it this way, right, for the people that are watching. So it's Slater, Zion, Bozeman, Mekhi, Joe Alt is how that thing is going to line up pushing forward.
And like you said, it wouldn't.
Or I should say James. I should say James on this. I think James ultimately wins that.
Yeah.
That
job.
And
it wouldn't have been fair to Zion. Yes, you can still practice him there, and you say, okay, in a year or so, but keep working it. But it wouldn't have been fair to try to throw this guy in, like you said, to make those calls, and then the pressure you put on Herbert. Now Herbert has to do more. The offensive guards have to do more. You could have really caused a lot of, a discord in that offensive line. And like you're saying, it's got to be a dance. It's got to be uniform. The offensive line, more than any position on the field, they have, because the offensive line usually are not the most athletic. It's the defensive line that's more athletic. Go look at it, more athletic than off. So you have to be in course, hip to hip sync, making sure, boom, how we're going on blocking, how it's a block, it's hands, it's foot. Offensive line have to be way more precise when you're playing offensive line, because usually the defensive guys are a lot quicker. They have that little quick twitch over it. So you have to be fundamentally sound to play offensive line.
Yeah, it's tip of the spear. Like we said, it's the identity. And we saw how important it is, how valuable it is based on what they used that number 5 pick on when they had a choice between Malik Neighbors and Joe Alt. It's no different than the Bengals drafting Jamar Chase instead of Penei Sewell. It's what do you value? There's no right or wrong way. It's just what you want the identity of your team to be, and it's the identity of the team. So, given Mekhi, and so here, quickly, because we got a lot of comments coming through, I want to acknowledge you all. You're awesome. We appreciate you, and we're going to get to all these comments. I promise. I just kind of want to lay some things on the table and then give you all a chance to interact. I do want to remind you all that we are brought to you by Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform, number one source for betting on all the madness, and the madness already started yesterday. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, it's your ultimate game day companion. Largest selection of odds, college basketball, $200,000 bracket contest is what they have going. So check that out. Number one sports betting source, every Cinderella story, every hat trick. They got it all. Odds, stats, more for every game, every play, and every win. So check out Bet Online. The game starts here. Kind of lost my track of thought. Oh, comments. So quickly, NH, money low. Made moves on the offensive line, defensive line. We'll get to those in free agency. Does that indicate that we target a wide receiver tight end in the draft since we lost the Ingram sweepstakes to the Broncos, is what he wrote. So, and I do think that's right, NH. That's a proper way to describe it. I think the Chargers probably made a very similar offer that the Broncos made to Evan Ingram, and he just chose to go to the Broncos. It's Sean Payton. He's always done great things. Think about Jimmy Graham with pass catching tight ends and Juwan. I think he was, Payton was there when he was there. So, he does well with tight ends. So I get it. if you're Ingram. But at the same time, look at what Greg Roman's done with tight ends. Mark Andrews, and look what he did with Will Dissly last year as his only option. Like, he turned Will Dissly into a viable pass-catching tight end. And so I would have loved to have seen that signing, because then, yes, that frees up that draft pick where you don't have to freak out and maybe trade up to get Colston Loveland, and you can just let the draft fall to you. But that's, yes, and wide receiver, I think a lot of people are starting to pencil in wide receiver to the Chargers. If Tet McMillan is going to slide, or if Egbuka is going to be there, if Emeka Egbuka, why do I always struggle with his name? Ekbuga. I don't know what it is. Anyway, or Matthew Golden, the 3 first-round wide receivers that they're talking about. Yeah, I think that does then bring that into play, because it is sort of the one position, like we said, you got to find speed and explosiveness. And that could come from the tight end like Colston Loveland, or it can come from a T-Mac who ran a lot faster than I thought he was going to. A lot of people were whispering that thing was going to be in the 4.6s. So 4.55 at that size, at 6'4", that's plenty fast for me.
Yeah, and that's what they do. If you look at Joel and you said, hey, if Joel was going to be in the draft next year, if you can go back and rewind time, the Chargers wouldn't do anything different. They would have taken him 5th overall, because he's a generational player. See, people don't understand. When you're in the draft, you're trying to get a guy that that's going to be a staple and a mainstay. You do whatever it takes. That's what you're talking about, free agents. That's what the Chargers are doing now. They're saying, if the season started tomorrow, could we compete? Absolutely. Now, this draft is going to be about game changers. You want to make sure now in this draft, like you're talking about, somebody take the top off through, someone with the speed, even a great running back, find a great tight end, because you already have Dissly, you have average guys, so you can go out right now and compete. So the team is not missing necessarily anything. Now that's what Harbaugh wants to do. He said, now let me go get somebody just going to tip it and turn it in our balance. Let me go get a big time runner that's going to tip it a little bit more on the scales. We can win right now and we can compete. But let me go get a receiver that's going to be a nightmare. Let me go find a pass rusher. And so if you don't do that, that's what I think that this team, the way that they draft and the way that they build in free agency, the free agency is saying, if the season starts today, can we play good football? And right now, all the fans will say, yes, the Chargers can play good football and they can compete right now. So in that draft, you're right, Money. You're going to go after guys that can really help you, but also you can still build with those guys. So you don't need them to be great right now. You need the guy to be great on a play. Look at McConkey. Look how he rounded into being one of the best receivers in the league. At one of the, not the best rookie receiver, but look, it wasn't right away. It was, hey, let's put him in this play. And look at the way these guys perform at the end of the season. That's what they want to do in the draft, to have a guy with the potential to turn it up when it's needed most.
Yeah, and I think, when it comes to drafting tight ends, what have we talked about a lot here on the pod? And it's such a hard position, man. You're an offensive lineman and you're a wide receiver. You're in both meetings. You're popping from room to room because you got to know how to block. You got to know your blocking assignments, and you got to know what routes you're supposed to run, what combos, how that's all coming together. That's why it is so rare, and that's why it was so incredible the season that Brock Bowers put together, because it is a lot that is put on your plate the second you get drafted. So I know recency bias will suggest, because of how well Dalton Kincaid and Sam Laporta, and then last year with Brock Bowers, how well these guys played that position. But that's outliers, man. Typically, tight ends take a second. They take a second to kind of adapt, and especially if you're going to be asked to do what Greg Roman wants you to do, and that's, you're going to have to block your ass off. And so I think that's something to be wary of. And that's why I think a lot of people were getting excited by some of the reports out there that the Ravens were shopping Mark Andrews. And that's over. They picked up his $4 million signing bonus, or his $4 million roster bonus on Monday. So that ship has sailed. And that's why people are getting excited that Dallas Goedert is out there from the Eagles, that he may be on the block, because now you can just drop those guys in and you feel like, hey, here's Will Dissly, a guy that has never been a pass-catching tight end, but he's a vet. He's done it. It's not a big deal for him. Roman's asking him to do a lot of things that he hasn't done in the past, and he can get out of there with his career highs and catches, yards. yak was off the charts. And, unfortunately, it showed up in the playoff game. Like, hey, maybe, there's going to be limitations, with a guy who's typically throw me 20, 30 balls and, I'm going to block. I'm going to be one of the best blocking tight ends in the league. So, yeah, they've got to get that solved. And, yeah, they can solve it with Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland. If it's not one of those two, I think they could still solve it with Mason Taylor, Elijah Arroyo, or Ferguson, or Fannin, or Helm, or any of these guys. I just think you have to remember, like, I always think about, Andy Bischoff talking to us in those pressers and saying, it's not easy, guys. It's not an easy position, man. It's a lot to take in.
It is, especially as a tight end to go in and play right away. It's hard for rookies. You know that. Look at Antonio Gates, one of the best tight end, Hall of Fame. Congratulations, Antonio Gates, Hall of Fame. But he didn't just walk in the league because he got thrown around, too light in the ass. You know how that is. It's so tough to get a tight end to walk out on the field as a rookie. And you saw about what they did with him. They moved him off IR. He played detached from the line. They ran away from him. Because you're just sometimes it's hard for a tight end to come in and just play. Like you're saying, you go get a veteran guy you can play with. Look at Disley. Disley came in. Blocking is what he does. Yeah, you could catch the ball every now and then. He's going to get a ball here and there and make a play. You look at me. You had a guy. Okay, talking about a fullback. Look at you. Go get a guy like Mike Alston, throw him out in the pass route. He's going to do Cal Hughes check. But if you're saying, hey, you want to go get a guy that's a hammer and go block, it was me. But if you're saying, hey, look, now Lorenzo's going to be in an offense he's going to have to catch 40, 50 passes and do those things, then I wasn't that guy. And it's because I wouldn't fit that system. So you can't, and it's still one of the greatest blockers ever. So guys have to understand their role. And you try to turn me into something else that I wasn't capable of doing or just wasn't great at it. That's the coaches. That's on the coach. So yes, every now and then K4 out in the flat, the big catch, run 20, 30 yards, but that is not the norm. And so that's what you're saying. Disley is a hell of a blocker. One of the better blockers, run block, get on the scoop block, and understand ace block, tight end and tackle, acing up to the linebacker. He's a good blocker. When it comes to pass catch, he's just average. So you do have to address the tight end position. You do definitely have to, and they will do that.
Yeah, they will. I mean, how they do it, don't know. Like we said, there's some good ones. There's some tight ends I like in the draft. At the same time, it could be that vet. It still could be out there after the draft. Remember, players become available. All right, I want to get to some of these comments, even though we got a lot that I still want to attack because there's a number of free agent signings. We haven't even talked about Mike Williams yet, which we're very excited about. But here we go. All right, shout outs. These are people that are just saying what's happening. So Rick, Pappy, John, dressage gal. Oh, the dressage. Yeah, let's go. Let's see, Owen, yes, we're live. Jorge, Crisco boys, damn right we are. Who else we got? Fitness, I feel a lot better if we got Tate Ratledge or Jared Wilson. Yeah, look, I think if you're talking about interior linemen in the second, third round, that's fine. Fitness is the name here. But what we're kind of getting at is that feels like it's now they don't have to take that guy at 22. It's not such a glaring need if you're running back with Pip, Bozeman, and Zion that you're like, okay, this was a bit of an issue last year. We're just going to run back with it and run it back, and that we're going to feel good. No, you'd probably want to augment that. And so the fact that they signed Becton and James now, I think brings those names into play. Fitness that it could be a Tate Ratledge, who's guard center possibility out of Georgia, or Jared Wilson, and that's something you can concentrate on day 2. Maybe even as late as the third round. Go ahead, Lo.
I was going to ask you, so with the addition of interior linemen, you went after on the offensive line. Would you now you already have Najee, so now you're going to say, okay, you're going to get it back. We know that,
right.
But now you don't have to. It's not necessarily. It's got to be the main thing. So, what is the biggest need? Do you still think interior line, or would you now? You went and got Mike Williams, so you said, okay, now you got another veteran, good receiver. So where now is the onus? I know it was offensive line for you earlier. How do you view it now? Is it a dire need still, or where would you go now if you're the Charger? Just if I was putting you on the clock.
Yeah. No, I think Lo. For me, it's more. It's kind of all about that first round pick, right? You want to be in as best a position as possible to draft best available player. Because after that, more often than not, needs are going to come into play, right? Like they trade up 3 spots to get Ladd. Why'd they do that? because they had Ladd ranked in the teens, and they were like, holy crap, we're in the second round. This is a player that we had at 17, 18 on our board, and he's available, and we got, because all of these other players that are available, there's a gap between Ladd and them. So yes, it was a need, but it was also so far and away the best player on their board that they felt the need to go up and get him. And I think ultimately you want to try to use free agency. You want to draft and develop. So that first round pick, you can do whatever you want based on who falls to you. And if it's Colston Loveland, take the tight end. If it's Gray Zabel, take the center, guard, offensive lineman. If it's Kenneth Grant, take the tackle, or Harmon, or any of the if it's T-Mac at wide receiver, or Ekbuka, yes, take the wide. I think that's ultimately what you're trying to get to with the signing of Najee, Low. And you know what, Owen, I'm just going to address your comment right now. Any of you guys have thoughts on JK? Should we let him walk? When you contracts tell, one half of the story is the signing, the other half is what does the contract look like? The Najee contract is $5 million with $4.5 million in incentives. You're not going to do Najee, that way. You're not going to have $4.5 million of incentives be compromised by JK coming back. I don't envision that. Now it's possible, and you'll just have a conversation with him and maybe adjust things and make the money right. But when you've got that much on the table based on usage and carries and benchmarks, and you sign for just 1 year as a running back instead of trying to chase that multi-year deal, that to me reads, hey, you're going to be the guy. We may draft somebody, but it's going to look like it has the last 4 years when you've rushed for 1,000 yards.
No question. Harbaugh wouldn't bring that guy in Najee and do a veteran guy like that. And that's Ojoro Ortiz. Exactly. Your money, you hit the nail right on the head. They're going to say, look, we got a lot of incentives for you to make, so we're going to give you an opportunity. Now, if it's coming out and he's not doing well and he's fumbling the ball, those things, hey, look, he understands as a veteran, I got to sit. But they're going to give him every opportunity to tote the mail, to have the opportunity, even if they bring in a rookie. Hey, even if the rookie's good, they're going to we're going to let you guys split some time. But Najee, they are not going to do it better. Like, you just don't do that or bring a guy in and make him sacrifice so you make a center base. So I think that this guy's going to carry the majority of the ball no matter what.
Yeah. And look, I think it's all kind of like it's all part of this puzzle that you're trying to connect, right? That who are the offensive line guys that they're signing? Mekhi Becton, Saquon Barkley in the conversation for MVP, win the Super Bowl on a run-first identity offense, right? With this guy, he and Lane Johnson, the best right side of an offensive line in football last year. So, like, that's an identity. So here I'm going to address this, John, in the comments, who writes, Raiders fans are already clowning us over the James signing. So it's not like they signed. It's not the Aaron Banks $77 million deal that the Packers gave him. It's what I read into this signing, Low, and why Raider fans are clueless, as they typically are. They're not smart people. Is that this acknowledges, hey, we see it too. Relax. Yeah, we signed Bozeman to a multi-year deal. We've already talked about Zion taking snaps at center. And now we're bringing in a guy that prior to last year had some really good tape playing center. It shows you, the fan, that the front office is like, yeah, we know. We know that center's got to be right. And we know that it wasn't as right as it could have been last year. And guess what? We're attacking it. We're addressing it. Dahlman wasn't the right guy. And Bradbury most definitely was not the right guy. Those are both, you got the, Vikings is Kevin O'Connell. That's the Shanahan wide zone, outside zone. He's a smaller center. He's a super athletic center. Yeah, you want athleticism at center, no doubt about it, but you also want some beef, for what Harbaugh wants to do. So that's what I would say if you're paying attention to Raider fans, John, just say, hey, our team recognizes that they need a center, that there needs to be competition at that position. And now they got 3 guys reportedly competing for it.
Yeah, do nothing and see what happens. How'd that turn out for you? So the Chargers are doing something. You got to realize you can't jump in, and that's what Harbaugh does great. And Ortiz, they're like, we're not going to not overpay. But here's the deal: we got $1, and this $1, a quarter is allocated here. We're not going to spend it. That's what a lot of teams do when it comes down to quarterback. You look at all these, it's Darnold. You say, okay, God, I got to pay this quarterback 300 or 400 million. You look at what's going on with Purdy. It's like, so if I only have $1 and I give this guy 50 cents of that dollar, what does that do to my whole team? What does that do? So the Chargers, yes, they're like, oh, there was way better guys out there. Yes, but guess what? If I did that out of that dollar, now I gave a guy 75 cents. What is that? Does that make my team playoff bound? Does that make my team better? The Chargers aren't. They have a certain amount. It's not personal. It's business. And that's what you have to do. And you see now, look at the Niners, cap strong, do all those things because you said, I'm going to make the players happy. Ayuk, all those guys, you overpaid, do certain things. And it's because it became about the player. And understand it, player, get yours. But just because it doesn't fit with the Chargers, just because it doesn't fit with the Raiders, go. Someone else is going to pay you. Once someone's loss, it's someone's gain. So that's what the Chargers do. They're like, look, we're going to stay within our budget. Not that we don't love you, not that we don't want these high-priced players, because the Chargers do. But they're saying it doesn't fit our budget, our plan, our blueprint.
I mean, look at it this way. You're and yes, there are concerns about Mekhi Becton. He's been hurt almost every year of his career before last year. There were questions about his weight and whether or not he was committed to working out. All of those things. Chad Alexander knows the guy. He drafted him, and maybe it was just the Jets such a giant mess that it just, for like a lot of the guys at the Jets draft, it just didn't go the way they wanted it to. He gets to a winning organization with winning coaches, arguably the best offensive line coach in the league, and it clicks. And now you've got Mekhi Becton, 2 years, $20 million. Value that to your point of what you were just talking about, Lo, with Aaron Banks. Average, maybe slightly, not terrible, but slightly below average. And he's getting, essentially, it's a 1-year, $27 million deal. Everything else is not guaranteed. The guaranteed money is $27 million. But so you know what? Let me speak to that real quick, because here's, we're painting this rosy picture right now. If there is one concern I have, it's this. When Dan Moore, who is a below average, not terrible, below average left tackle, is making $50 million over 2 years on that $80 million deal. It's basically, that's what you got to do. Look at the guaranteed money and see how many years and find the void year. The Dan Moore deal is 2 years, $50 million. The Aaron Banks deal is 1 year, $27 million. That is now going to be used by Rashawn Slater's agent. And the longer you wait, the more you are going to pay. Tristan Wirfs is at $28.125 million. That's still the high mark. And if that deal was done, you would have paid Rashawn $28.25. And it would have been done. And your guarantees would have been around $87, $88 million. I think that's what Wirfs got. And it's essentially a 3-year, $28 million a year deal, which I would imagine they would sign up for right now. Beyond those parameters, what Dan Moore's getting, you're going to go into a meeting, the agent's going to be like 28.2, and Aaron Banks is making $27 million this year? No. The other problem is the Myles Garrett deal, the Jamar Chase deal. This is why agents make the money they make. They're going to sit down and say, okay, here's the Tristan Wirfs deal when he was paid $28.125 million. You know who the highest paid non-quarterback was at that point? Justin Jefferson. He got $35 million. So let's take those percentages of the highest paid non-quarterback of what Tristan got compared to what Justin got. And if I'm going to pencil it out, 28.125 divided by 35. Now I'm going to multiply 40.5 million of Jamar Chase by that same number. Figure it's like 0.8, 3 or something like that. Oh, number's now 32 million. Now that's the number, because that's the way I'm equating this. Justin Jefferson, wide receiver, highest paid non-quarterback, 35. Tristan Wirfs, 28.125. Jamar Chase, with the rise in the salary cap, 40.5. Rashawn Slater, we want 32. And I'm not saying that's what you pay him, but that's the stuff that now creeps into the negotiation when you want everyone to walk away and feel good about it. Like, the Slater's going to get done. That deal's going to get done. There's no doubt about it. But that's the one thing I don't know how I got on that kick, but that's that.
No, because
You
people
were
are
talking
always
about the
talking
money.
about people are always talking about the money. Mike McGlinchey, let's watch him up close. I work with the Niners. Watch it. I mean, he's an effort guy, great person, great leader. I mean, but he's not a great offensive tackle. Look at the money McGlinchey got 2 years ago from Denver. So if people just they have to realize, like you said, this is what the market bears. And if you don't, that's why Harbaugh and they say, hey, look, let's get something. We know we need to get better. We're gonna take a risk on a guy that may be a little overweight, that's been injured, but we know his potential. We know what he's capable of. And that's what you hedge on. I'd rather do that than saying, okay, I'm gonna hamstring my team and put all my cash out there, and now I can't make any more moves. So I think they're going to continue to do this way. We saw it last year. They're not going to blink. They're going to hold serve. This team and this organization, look at the Ravens. They do what they do, and it's shown that it works.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's no way you can have Harbaugh out there talking about tip of the spear. What's the one position group that doesn't need anybody else, but everybody else needs them? Offensive line, like Slater's going to get done. And look, that may be what a lot of these moves are pointing to is, hey, we had to get Khalil for 18 million. We've got Justin on the books for 50 million. We've got to get Slater in here for 29, 30 million bucks, So that's the reality is we're going to have, a guy that's making that kind of scratch with a quarterback, that's making that kind of scratch. And we've got to make all these pieces fit. So we're not going to go out there and overpay for Will Fries, for Drew Dahlman, who's not a perfect fit in our scheme, for Devontae Adams was fine. That would have been that's something that I think they wanted. And he just picked the Rams, but that's my only concern. I'm such a fan of Rashawn Slater. I think he is so important to this team. I think he does everything right. He busts his ass. He plays hurt. He brings in teammates. He's the one that brought Trey to Duke Manyweather and said, Trey, let's get you down, man. Let's get you down here. Work with me in the offseason and let's go. And that's who you pay, right? Those are the guys that you pay. And not to mention, if you were to go to Justin Herbert and say, hey, who's the one guy that you would want us, or Rashawn Slater? Like they would just say, well, you wouldn't even finish the sentence. It's like, well, my left tackle, of course, the best left tackle in football. So that's why I think, yes, it's going to get done. I just want it to get done sooner than later. So, all right, we got a lot of comments, man. I'm so sorry, folks, but let's try to get to a handful of these because you've all been so awesome in giving us stuff, and I've kind of been rambling like I always do. I talk way too much. Low Neal, all steel. Yeah. Excited about what Dante Jackson brings to the secondary: speed, great hands, threat to return it to the house whenever he gets his hands on the ball. Lo, I mean, look, you've got Klink, Steve Clinkscale, one of the best defensive back coaches in football. You saw that what he was able to do last year with Eli Apple, with two rookies in Tarheeb Still and Cam Hart. And basically, what did they give him? They gave him a physical specimen in Benjamin St-Juste. And they gave him a guy that's got a nose for the ball in Dante Jackson. And it's just like they're, much like our guy was saying about the Raiders clowning us for signing James. Same thing with the Commanders fans about Benjamin St-Juste. It's like, okay, well, your coaches aren't the Chargers coaches. And a lot of times guys just need to find the right fit. And I love that they brought in two vets to compete with these two rookies because, Derwin's going to play the nickel most of the time. He's going to play that big nickel role when they re-signed Elijah. So it's competition. I love the fact that you're bringing in competition. What does Coach always say? Competitors welcome.
Yep. And that's what you're going to do. Yeah, and you have to bring competition in. You did it on offensive line. You're doing it in the secondary. You're doing it at the running back position. You're going to make sure that your team is able to compete because you're going to have some fall off. You got injuries. Things are going to happen. You know that money every year. There's somebody is going to get hurt. So you have to prepare to say, I have to make sure I have a capable backup on every position. My backup become my starter. So I think this Charger team is building right. You build, you build in free agency, but you go get guys now that that are veteran guys that are going to play for you, that can come in, that's been game ready. The lights aren't going to get too bright. They're going to be ready to play. And don't be surprised if you see a rookie at the end of the year or a second-year player start to merge and take spots or start to split some time. That's what this organization does. They do a great job of developing players and turning them into good, from being just guys to becoming great players. Look with the DB. Look no further than the secondary, like you talked about. Yeah. Because of coaching, you had rookies that end up playing huge. Why? Because coaching and because of development of what Harbaugh believes in. So I think this team is on the right track. Yeah, would I had liked to see get Devontae Adams? No question, because he's a guy that can run route. He can be press man. The guy is just he's a physician. He's a step above Keenan. When you had Keenan out there, he is like the Keenan +5. So
Right.
what you would have got out of Devontae Adams. Him and McConkey together, just that duo would have been amazing. But it didn't happen. But you still went out and got Mike Williams. You went out and got
Love
a
it.
guy that's a veteran guy, a guy that knows how to win. So they're doing, if they're not getting the guy they want, they're saying, okay, but we're going to get a guy that maybe he's not as good, but he still have the smart and the IQ to play football and play at a high level.
Yeah, and the chemistry. I mean, we know what it looked like with Mike when he was healthy with Herbert. He's the best 50-50 ball catcher in the league. The best. And he's 2 years removed from that ACL from week 3 in Minnesota. So I think it's important to point to last year. Here's a 29-year-old guy that's coming off an ACL week 3 in 2023. It's 2024. Like, yeah, it's probably not going to look great. But now we're 2 years removed. Now this is he's had a 10 touchdown season. He's had a 1,000-yard season. Just think back to that week 18 game against the Raiders on Sunday Night Football, and Mike Williams and Justin Herbert and what they were doing on those 4th downs to push that thing into overtime. Like, he's an X. He is an X, and that's what they needed. You could not go into the season and say, well, Q looks like an X, so we can probably play. No, Q's a Z. Q's a Z. You've got an X. Now it's important to keep him healthy, and you do have to plan, because that's what happened to Q his rookie year, and I think it did not help his confidence. Is, when Mike got hurt in week 3, well, now all of a sudden they're like, you look the part, let's put you over there. And I think that went into some of those rookie season failures, that those questioning your ability, because he doesn't track the ball over his head well. He doesn't, kind of secure the ball, but he's a solid Z. He's, just get him in motion. Don't, get him on the move, get him the ball in stride and let him go. And that's what signing Mike does. And we know what it looks like. If Mike is right, we know what it looks like. It's fantastic. It's a red zone weapon. It's a downfield weapon. It'll open things up for Ladd. And because the guy's a giant, he's going to eat that bowl of chips off the DB's head most times, So it's a great sign.
I'm going to get you that shirt money. If Mike is right, you know what it looks like. There you go.
All right, more comments. Stainless Jogger, Steve Smith Sr. likes Golden. Blaine says, hoping for Grant to make it to 22. I'll say this to Stainless Jogger. I worked with Steve at the NFL Network for a number of years at the Combine. Steve knows his stuff. I know he's got an interesting delivery, and he's always wearing the flat bill, and you may kind of look at the presentation and kind of have a certain opinion of it. That dude studies. He would come to the Combine, man, and he'd have this thick-ass notebook, and he'd have his notes on every single player and know exactly what their strengths were, their weaknesses were, and he would come with, this is my guy. This is why I like him. So if Steve Smith likes Golden, I would be good with Golden. He is a great evaluator. Some of the guys show up there, and you can tell. You can tell they didn't do anything. They just, and then there's guys like Steve, and Maurice Jones-Drew's another one who would absolutely relish the opportunity to be at the Combine and talk about those backs and lay out which backs he likes and why. And you know what? I think for both those guys, there is a common thread. And it is that they didn't look the part. And when they showed up, they looked at Maurice Jones-Drew and they see a guy that's 5'8" and he's in a Reggie Bush draft. And they're like, no, the gap between those two guys is like this. And it's like, hey, man, if you were in LA watching UCLA and USC football, you knew that Maurice was the better all-around back. That Reggie, for as phenomenal as he was, could not run it between the tackles like Mo. Like, MJD was a freaking force between those tackles. And I think the same thing with Steve, more diminutive stature. Maybe you get overlooked. He's a Hall of Famer. Steve Smith's a Hall of Famer. I mean, and so I think that goes into those two guys in particular. So pay attention at NFL.com. Whatever those guys are posting, yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy you talk about those two guys. Maurice, he's tough. He wanted he's always talked to him. He's a good, and he loves, like you said, he loves football. He's always into it. Hey, this guy does this. He's a football nerd.
Yeah.
He is.
He's
Maurice
coaching
is.
low. He's the offensive coordinator at De La Salle at the powerhouse up there in the Bay Area, his alma mater. Like, that's how much that guy loves football. He is coaching high school football despite being Maurice Jones-Drew and still having a job on NFL Network. Like, that's how much that dude's into it.
Oh, he loves it. He does real estate. The guy's great. He's a jack of all trades, but he absolutely loves it. Yeah, you're right. Certain guys that you just like, they live and they breathe. They want to be around the combine. They want to be around those things, and they study. As Steven, talking about, Steven Senior. He's always around football. He knows what, like you talked about. He didn't look the part, short and statue, but just an over tough, mean Heinz Ward, mean, those tough guys that you can depend on. And I just think that when you look at those guys and when they say it, they mean it.
Yeah. I think any of those receivers, Egbuka or Golden or T-Mac, I'd be fine with any of them. Who would I prefer? I think T-Mac's an exceptional talent. I think he's getting a bad rap right now for whatever reason. I don't think there's any way he makes it to 22. If he does, I sprint to the stage with that card. He's Drake London. He's 6'5". He, like Mike, he is a 50-50 ball winner. He's silky smooth when he's in the air. Yeah, he doesn't have the separation speed. I get that. And Golden with his 4.39, and he looks at, he did it. He was their go-to guy. It was supposed to be Isaiah Bond, and it ended up being Matthew Golden on that Texas team that made the playoff and made a run in the SEC to the championship game. And Egbuka's just, he's it, man. He's it. He's everything. Ohio State wins the title. I know he just got overshadowed by Jeremiah Smith, who's going to end up being one of the greatest, if not the greatest, college football wide receiver we've ever seen based on what he did his freshman year. But any of those guys work. I would be fine with any of those guys. As far as Kenneth Grant goes, we've talked about him, Lo. I mean, I mentioned the conversation with Bruce Feldman, who said before Kenneth Grant ever took a snap, Jim Harbaugh sought him out and said, wait till you see this guy we got. He's a 3-star. He's a freak, an absolute freak. And he is. He's a complete freak of a player. And if he's at 22, I wouldn't mind that. The one thing I would say is the depth of the defensive tackle group is ridiculous. And you're going to get a really, really good player in round 2, maybe even in round 3. So that's where that sort of stuff might come into play.
Yeah, if you can get the better guy, that deep tackle, that three tech position, like Harbaugh's raving about that guy, I get him. You already got some decent pass rushers. You go get a run stopper. We lost the big fella in the middle, so you got Puna Ford. So now you're saying, look, let's go get that guy that's going to be a run stopper. Let's go get that guy that's going to be a game changer. He is a game changer. When you can got a game changer that can do it from the 3 technique, now you change that. You change the launch point for the quarterback. Quarterbacks can't step up. It makes your defensive ends, your pass rushers more effective. So if you can get a guy that can change the game from the middle, look what Philadelphia did in Super Bowl. When you got those guys in the interior that can wreck it, quarterbacks can't step. It becomes a jungle in there, and that's nowhere to go. There's no seams. So I like it. If you can get that guy, that's where I would do it. I think you build and you win in the trenches.
Yeah, that's what you would do at 22, and I think if that's what you would, if that's what you would do, Lo, then that's what you're gonna do, because between Kenneth Grant, Derek Harmon, Walter Nolan, I think you go through those 3 guys, right? And Walter Nolan is an absolute freak show, a freak show. He was the number one recruit. Yeah, he's a number 1 recruit in the nation when he went to A&M, ended up transferring over to Ole Miss. And the only reason why he's not going to the top 10 is because, it's the old off the field stuff, and it's not, bad behavior off the field stuff. It's maturity questions. It's things like that. Sure. And look, I say, fine, give him to Mike Elston, give him to Coach Harbaugh, and that stuff will be taken, because that's the same thing they said about T.R. Tart in Miami. And how did that turn out? Yeah,
I'm doing it then. I know you said maybe receiver. If you said where am I? If I think, I could be wrong, but if those guys, like you said, if those 3 guys or one of those guys are available, I think the Chargers would do that. No receiver, you can always, like you said, those guys are game changers. I get it, but I think they build in the trenches. What tells you they won't? Look at what they did last year with you said, I'm going to get a tackle. You look at the way this team thinks. Yeah, you got a receiver, second round, Ladd, what he did, but think about how Harbaugh and how this organization thinks. I think it's going to be a trench player. If those guys, if the best available players at that time, offensive line or D-line. And I think it's going to be that technique.
They're also, and look, interior linemen are so different from each other, right? Kenneth Grant isn't, he might be 70 pounds heavier than Walter Nolan. Walter Nolan is flying upfield, and he's that athletic pass rushing, that athletic pass rushing tight end. What is he? He's that's an exaggeration. So he's 6'3", 305. Kenneth Grant is 6'3", 340. So you're talking about, he's a little bit more of that stout body. And then Derek Harmon, who's been compared, and you never want to make those comparisons to Chris Jones. He's 6'5", 310. So you can't go wrong. As far as I'm concerned, you can't go wrong with any of those guys. But you start getting down in this group and you see Tyreek Williams and Shamar Turner and Josh Farmer. And it's such a deep group. And it's like, well, and it kind of goes to what we talked about last year. Joe Walton, Ladd McConkey, or Malik Neighbors and Suamatia. That's sort of the conversation you got to start having. All right. I'm going to shut up and I'm going to get through a bunch of these comments. Pokey Poppin'. What's up, Lo? Started watching the Chargers when you were smacking guys around for LT. Good to see you healthy. That's for you, Lo.
Thank you.
Bozeman. Low Neal's talent is hard to conceal. When he's on the field, you know the deal. Love that. Here we go. Let's see what else we got. Zion is smart AF. I can see why they'd want to give him a try. Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is, Mike, is kind of the way I interpreted those comments about Zion at center is, if you put it all on his plate and he's got to absorb it, he's going to, and he's going to get all the calls right. And maybe by having to do that, he picks up just a tick. He picks up just a tick and identifying it and blocking it up. That's kind of the way I interpret it. But with the signing of James and re-signing Bozeman on a multi-year, I just feel like they're like, okay, we're good. And let's just work on Zion at guard and just taking that next step. Two major needs, IDL, and your thoughts. Yep, I think we addressed that. We just talked about it with the defensive tackle. Low, you said that's the way you would go if there was a wide receiver, a tight end, and a defensive tackle available at 22 that you liked. What your tiebreaker? Like, what order would you go?
That would be. I'd go interior line, but I'd fix the interior line. I just think that you want to make sure that you have a guy because you know what you got in 52, what you have, but I would make sure that I solidify that. And then in the second round, if I have a tight end there, I'm going tight end because I believe in I'm good with Mike, but adding Mike Williams, I'm good with receiver. I would go interior D line, then I would go tight end, and then I would, address if it's a receiver or offensive line. But that's what I would do. I think if you want to compete and go a little deeper, I think if you get those fixed, you'll be all right. Because the receivers, you got to admit, the receivers have been. Now you've got Mike. You already know what McConkey can do. You got some young guys that stepped up last year. So I think that you're okay, but you want to make sure you can press in the interior line and have a guy that's a game changer for me.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong. And by the way, you might see me if you're watching live and not listening to this. I'm looking off screen, but it's just because I'm constantly refreshing. Someone in the comments said we just signed someone. I don't know who. I don't know who either. So maybe somebody in the comments can mention that. Blaine, LSU, Mason Taylor, Jason's kid in the third or fourth. I don't think he's going to make it to the third or fourth. Blaine, I think you're going to have to take him in the second, and I don't even know if he's going to make it to 55. There's just so much athleticism there. He's a bit polarizing, but I just feel like that's such that body, not to mention that line of Jason Taylor's, your dad, like that's some, I like him. I really do. I like him a lot. And I would love to see him at 55. If they go D tackle at 22, I'd have no problem with that. Question for Lowe. Have you heard what Antonio Gates had to say about you recently? You are a certified legend, brother.
I didn't. What did Gatesy say? Tell me. Do you know? Did you? I don't know. Put it in the chat.
You're great.
Put it in the chat.
What do we all say about Lowe?
Exactly. No, Gatesy was the best. A great teammate. The guy was just always smiling. Never seen him frowning. Just a great guy. I'm gonna digress really quick here because I gotta ask you because you know everything, money. Ask money. Money's money. What? Yeah, you are. What's going on with Sanders? I've heard second round before. I've heard top 5 picks.
Shadur.
Yeah, it's what do you? Why is it so scattered? Some say top 5. Someone says could be late. What are you hearing?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess what I've heard. I think ultimately that's not going to happen. He's going to end up going in the top 5. I think there's he's not the most athletic guy. He doesn't have the strongest arm. Some people think that could be climate dependent, that, if you're the Browns, if you're the Giants, like, okay, you got to play outside. You got to play in the AFC North or the NFC East. Like, is that really a match kind of thing? Other people talk about how Deion said, the only way I'm jumping to the NFL is if I get a chance to coach my kid. Well, now, if you're drafting top 5, your team stinks. You've got Shador, and your entire fan base is clamoring for Deion to be the head coach. Are you comfortable enough as a head coach that you want that breathing down your neck? If you're sitting at 3-6, so that's the sort of stuff that goes into it. It feels like Cam Ward is locked in at number 1, whether that's Tennessee or that's the Giants trading up to get him, or the Browns trading up one spot to get him. That's locked. And so once that happens, I think when you have 2 incredibly talented players in Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter, now at 2 and 3, and then when you get to 4, okay, well, the Patriots have Drake May. So they're, the Jaguars have, Trevor Lawrence. The Raiders just traded for Geno Smith. And now you get into that. We've already got a quarterback, and now you start sliding. And I think that's where it comes in. But ultimately, I think he ends up going high. I think he's a really good player. He's a winner. I like him a lot. I just think it has to be the right situation. I think he is a quarterback where you'd want it to be the right situation. So that's just kind of from what I've gathered and the people that I've talked to. But I do know the Giants, they were way in on Matthew Stafford. So that's where maybe some of the reservations come from. Like, well, hey, if they were way in on Shador, that thing would not have gotten as far down the line as it did with Stafford. And it got, this is the finish line. It got to right here.
Oh, they wanted Stafford. They wanted Stafford bad, huh?
Oh, yeah. Same with the Raiders. I mean, it was right here. And for whatever reason, it just didn't. Y'all can dig up and sniff around and figure that stuff out, I guess. So that's where I think some of that comes from, Lo. It's like, hey, if these teams were super into Shador, why were they willing to give up draft compensation and all of this money to a guy that's had back and arm issues and is maybe here for another 3 to 4 years max, when you can get that rookie on a rookie deal for the next 5 years? If they really thought that highly of Shador, they wouldn't be doing that. They'd be jockeying to try to get to the top of the board to get him. So that's where I think a lot of that comes in. All right, more comments. What's happening with Jamari Sawyer? 1 more year on his deal, Mike. I think he's a great depth piece. Can play left tackle, can play guard. And I think that's just, he's a 6th-round pick. So it's a guy that's on a very affordable rookie contract. Zion, too talented to not be better. Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, Blaine, is just getting comfortable. This will be a 2nd year in this scheme. I mean, you can speak to that, Lo. Like, how much more comfortable you feel the 2nd year after you get a new offensive system installed?
Yeah, I think he could get better. Even when he came in as a rookie, he got by on talent. He was so, coming off, he would kill you if he touched you, but his footwork, Zion's footwork wasn't as good early in his career. But when he come off, he's so strong, like you talk about, when he put those big hands on you, he's bottom heavy, he's strong, he can move you. So for him, it's about technique. It's about stop trusting your ability because you're athletic, and say, okay, I got to be technique sound. That's what Zion, because Zion, how strong he is, and he puts him here. So he believes too much in his strength and his talent instead of saying that's what the main focus, I believe, for Zion. He is one of the better guards in this league when he plays good technique. That's what he has to continue to do. And I think Harbaugh and this coaching staff is going to say, Zion, we know how powerful, we know you got a great punch, we know you can run block, we know when you're on, you're on. But if you follow us and get this technique down, that's his biggest problem to me, is the technique, the little attention to detail.
Yeah, and like you said, he's got it, man. He's got the body, he's got the athleticism, he's got the brain. It's just, getting it to click. And some guys, it just takes a minute.
Yeah.
And, it's going to be his 4th year, so it's about time for, that 59 seconds to turn to a minute. It's now been a minute, so let's get it. Who do you think, this is from Angel or Angel, who do you think is more likely, Mason Taylor, Terrence Ferguson? I think you're probably talking about 2 different rounds. I would guess Ferguson is more a 3rd, maybe even a 4th-round prospect, but probably a 3rd-round prospect. Mason Taylor's more a 2nd-round prospect. So I think are they available at their pick, or could they trade back? And, like, could you trade out of your number 2 to get Terrence Ferguson and something along those lines? I think they're both kind of in that next grouping of guys that, probably are going to need a second and might not be ready to make a major impact. Never know. They could, but might not be ready to make a major impact. This is from Dave. Mark Andrews worth a third. We talked about that. I think the fact they picked up his $4 million roster bonus suggests that he's very, very likely to start the season in Baltimore. I think that deal would have had to have gotten done before that roster bonus was due. Let's see. Stone Smart. Yeah, I was bummed to see Stone leave, man. I thought that, you saw a couple of those games, man, when that athleticism was flashing and he was providing that pass catching. And I think it was just a 1-year deal to the Jets, but maybe they're promising him a bigger role, or for whatever reason, this particular coaching staff just felt like he couldn't get the blocking to a point where they were comfortable putting him out there. But I always liked Stone, and, he's a Riverside JC quarterback. So I got a soft spot in my heart for that guy for going from a sweet JC here in Southern California to becoming a tight end and putting in the work to do that. How many? Oh God, we got a lot of comments. Holy shnikes.
They might be all you, Monday. They might be all you. I'm getting ready to act like
I feel bad. All right, real quick. I went all the way to the bottom. So for those of you that are coming in now, why not take a flyer on Tyler Lockett? I could see that. I think it's all money based. What position do I want to pick at 22? I think I'm with Lowe. I like the idea of solidifying that defensive tackle spot. However, I don't really care about position as much as I care about value, and the idea that someone could slide to them. Colston Loveland, Tet McMillan, if Kenneth Grant, like if those Amari and Hampton at running back, like if those guys start sliding, then I think you have that conversation of, we'll figure it out. We'll figure out. We signed Deshaun Hand. Look at what we did with Poona Ford, with Morgan Fox, with Tier Tart. You got, Igboigbe, who's going to be in his second year, and they said he's going to be a developmental guy coming out of Alabama. So we feel like he's going to develop. And then, if T-Mac's sitting there, if Colston Loveland's sitting there, then yeah, I'm fine with that. Go that route and take advantage of a better player sliding for whatever reason. So that's more how I view it. Replies, upgraded center, great gap scheme. Yeah, that's someone talking about Andre James. These are guys. Oh, I love this. They're all talking to each other. Jenny's going to be Raiders at 6. I think that's probably right. Jump in here, Lo, if you want to say anything. I'm just trying to scroll through as many of these as possible.
Go right ahead. I just think that, for me, while you're strolling, you just jump and interrupt when you find something.
Nah, you're good, man. Just because I want to get to these people who are nice enough to pop in here and leave these comments. All right, so here we go. I'm going to try to get through a lot of these. Anyway, Chargers move up. Yeah, I just don't, Dan, I don't think it's, I think it would be that if they see value and they don't have to give up too much. This team Joe Ortiz is talking about how important comp picks are. So the idea of sacrificing picks to move up isn't necessarily but he showed he would do it, but he traded a 5th to go up 3 spots in the second. That's not trading a second to go up 5 spots in the first. Like that's a lot of draft capital. You're talking about a 2nd-round pick, Ladd McConkey, a 3rd-round pick, Junior Colson. I know he was hurt last year, but a lot of excitement there. So yeah, I think if it's the right play, if Tyler Warren's sliding, I mean, that guy is tailor-made to be in a Jim Harbaugh offense, a Greg Roman offense. So yes, let's say for whatever reason, Tyler Warren is sliding and he's sitting there before, the Bengals or the Steelers or the Broncos or some team like that, or the Colts. I think at 15 would be a Tyler Warren team over there, and you want to jump in front of them, then yeah, then you move up. Let's see. Has us taken McMillan, DJ? Yeah, I think that's kind of maybe playing into the idea that he's sliding a little bit. Lowe, why isn't Lowe in the Hall of Fame? I'm with you, Angel. Lowe should be in the Hall of Fame, damn it. Hey, he's the best fullback of his era. If you're the best of your position of your era, why aren't you in the Hall of Fame? In this window of football, this guy was the best at what he did. That's a Hall of Famer to me. What else we got? No, Zabel reminds me of Hunter Henry. I don't see these people. I'm just talking to each other. I love it. May not be important. Do we see Keenan Allen reunited with Mike Dubb and Herb? I don't think so. I mean, I'm not saying it's not possible. Certainly, how much Herbert loves him. But, Lo, I just look at it and feel like then you're taking slot snaps away from Ladd.
You're not going to bring Keenan back. I would love to. I mean, like you said, he's a great guy, great leader. The guy was amazing. But you're not going to make. You brought in Mike Williams. You're not going to bring Keenan, and he's a good receiver. Still has some thread left on his tires, but
Yeah.
I don't see that happening. I think you got to look at also last year he was injured in Chicago as well. He's been injured here with the Chargers. You just know it's a deal. He's not going to give you a full season. What now? Can he play and give you some good games? Absolutely. But that hamstring, it's chronic. He is not going to give you a full season. You just can't do it for what the Chargers want to do.
And I think we've talked about the wide receiver room as a basketball team, right? You need that speed. Like that's if you're going to go out and spend more money, go find speed. Get someone that can take the top off of defense and open this thing up. I like Jimmy Horn Jr. Yeah, I could see that. I think that's more of like a Angel like day 3 sort of deal. Huge O-line, strategy in Philly, exactly. Yeah, Mark, I think you're echoing what Lowe said. Draft D-line, just like Philly has year after year after year. Davis and Carter and Williams, and that's how you win. You got to get out of here, Lowe.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to act like a tree. You can keep it rolling, but
I'll do this for 10 more minutes. Anything else you want to add? Because I've talked way too much on this.
No, Money, you hold it down. Last time your phone went out and I had to hold it down.
And you had to.
So hey, you know what? That's why your money. That's why they pay you the big money. You're the best, bro.
That's what they're paying me over here. Big money.
Hey, appreciate you guys. Both up, man. Love you guys. Love you, fans.
All right, Lowe's got to go to work. I got some time here before the radio show gets rolling, so I'll keep going. I think I'll keep going. All right, so here we go. Ortiz signed free agents. Yeah, players will be cut. Exactly. Mike Williams isn't the same player, Catherine. I know that, but Mike's also was coming off an ACL from week 3. So to me, for $6 million, as opposed to trading a second and handing over $33 million a year to DK Metcalf, this is a nice sort of Band-Aid of, hey, let's give him 1 year. Let's see if he's back. We know the chemistry's there. He's a true X. And now we've got X Mike, ZQ, slot, lad. And then you can start talking about the depth of that room, maybe through the draft or some of the guys that they have like Brennan Rice and Jalen Johnson and that sort of thing. Jalen Reagor, who was re-signed. Don't forget about Postry. Big Mike, better option than DJ Chark, no doubt about that. He just never could quite get on the same page. Realistic expectation for Brennan Rice. Delfino, I don't know. I really don't know, just because he could not get on the field last year. And I thought he had flashes in training camp for sure and felt great about his future. I knew it was going to probably take a minute, but at the same time, I felt like as the season went on, you just kind of heard about, Semi was sort of the guy that was ahead of him on the depth chart. And then they brought in Reagor and he was ahead of him on the depth chart. So I think that's something that you want to see Brennan take that step, be one of those guys that we come out of OTAs and we come out of training camp saying, okay, pretty great, got great value there, late in the draft. And he's ready to kind of be part of that rotation and that wide receiver room that's active. Doesn't matter now from corner to IDL, running back, O-line. Yeah, BPA. There you go, Mark. Somebody must have commented on my Seaside Market. Yeah, Cardiff crack, best piece of meat you can get anywhere, and grill it up, man. It's just so buttery and fantastic. So, yes. I was down in that part of town earlier this morning, and for whatever reason, it just lined up that when I got dressed at 4:30 in the morning, this was the T-shirt that was on the top of the stack. And as a matter of fact, somebody I was chatting with when I got out of the water said, "Oh man, that shirt makes me hungry." And I said, "I know, me too." And I just don't have the time to stop there because I'm doing this podcast and answering all these questions. They lose Palmer, gain Williams. Wide receiver room hasn't improved. Catherine, I think it's different. I do like Josh Palmer, and I think you see the deal that he got speaks to his talent, has not been able to stay on the field. And that's the main concern, right? You gain Williams. The thing you gain, though, is a true X, an outside receiver, 50-50 ball winner, red zone threat, something that Palmer was very good at. You saw those hands on those 2-point conversions, but at the same time, Mike is just that big body, throw the fade, throw the go ball, and let him go up and get it, and how comfortable Herbert was doing that with him. I think with Palmer, there was just, I don't know, I think injuries, and they're just never, you felt like maybe those two guys just, they were never in sync like he and Mike Will were. So I do think it's an upgrade. Best player available. Would love Grant, Henderson, tight end, in that order. Loveland, if he's there, at 23. Franchise tag, those days are over. There's no franchise tags. Those have passed. Asante Samuel Jr., I know I'm surprised by that, Eddie. I think there's probably just maybe concerns about that injury, and kind of what sort of deal you can find for him. Comp picks, of course, are important, and that's what Joe Ortiz is after, and that's probably a lot of the reason why he's signing the guys the way he's signing them. Put together, and I hope you guys can make some time during the week. Put together a 3-round mock draft presented on next week's pod. Yeah, I'll see if we can do that. I've kind of dug deep enough into this that I could probably project it. Pay the man show, blah, 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 would be nice. Trade for Browns. Betonio, I don't think they need to. I'll be honest, Eddie. I think the Becton signing has kind of relieved all of that. I think you're pretty comfortable with your depth and what you have now, especially with the James signing. And so now you have your depth. They needed a guard. I think I know that the coaches think highly enough of Zion that they feel like, man, if it just clicks, this guy has got everything you want from an offensive lineman. And we just got to get that to connect. And maybe, with Becton on one side and Alt over there, and now you got Slater. I mean, you're talking about 3 All-Pros now in Becton and Alt and Rashawn, 3 high first-round picks. Zion, first-round pick. Like, these are guys that have that much talent. And it's so important to have all 5 on the offensive line working together. And that's what you see from the Eagles and why they've been so dominant at that position. Slater contract, 3rd highest in 2 years, blah, blah, blah. Ravens rarely made splash. That's exactly right. Position set in stone. Corner safety. Top corner or safety falls, you wouldn't take them. I don't think so. Mark, maybe just because of like how good the coaching is and what they were able to do with 5th-round players. Look, Barron slides, and Will Johnson slide, Michigan guy. Yeah, I guess you could make a case. Corners are damn important. So sure. And I think that kind of goes into the best player sort of conversation. Let's see. Best player, Joe Ortiz, sign another X. There's some things about Cooper that people are talking about that might be a bit of a concern, injury-wise. So, and as far as Keenan goes, I think we kind of already addressed that. Take corner. Yeah, exactly. We talked about that. Johnson and Barron. So there we go. Already got that. Yes, Rashawn goes to fan events. Exactly, Pappy. Rashawn's awesome. He's coming back. Save money. Blah, blah, blah. Double dip. All right. Still going through. And we're getting toward the end. Sought after in free agency. Didn't get a big contract for, okay, Kat, this is a lot of Catherine. I don't know what your problem is with Mike, but you don't like him. So that's fine. All good. We'll let the play sort it all out. Let's see what we got. Yeah, see? And now the commenters are coming after you. Yes, Mike, you're right. Mike Williams is a massive upgraded X. It's just the health that you are concerned about. But like I said, he's now 2 years removed. And that ACL came playing him in the slot. It's like, come on, man. Guy's got an injury history, and now he's lining up in the slot. He's running over the middle, and he gets his freaking knee taken out. Roman's offense, ground and pound, high efficiency pass plays. That's why we're kind of talking about today was pretty. That's why we're talking about tight end and just how well he does with tight ends and why you'd love to see like an exceptional athlete at that position. Man, this is a lot of you all going back and forth about Mike. Let's see. Keep going almost to the end here. JK's not signed. Henderson at 55. Mark, I don't think Trayvon's going to slide to 55. I think he's going to go in the first, or like he's going to be that guy that you go to bed the night of the first round and the first pick of the second is a trade up to get Trayvon Henderson. I think is kind of how that works. He's just so explosive, man. And he's so darn good. So that's kind of the way I see that. And look, that could be hey, we can trade back from 22 and get to the first pick of the second round and that's where Judkins or Henderson, and then you pick up a third as well. And now you've got 2 2s and 2 3s because of how deep this draft is. And there's certain positions and certain standout players that could be sitting there at 22 that maybe a team would come up for. I didn't hear that JK was off the table. I don't know if that's for me. I just said based on the contract that was given to Najee, that's the way I read into it. Where are we at? Happy to have 2 starting centers. I'm with you, Mike. Love that. What does Coach say? Competitors will welcome. Caleb Johnson or Henderson? Henderson for me all the way. I love Travion Henderson. He just, DJ made the comparison. I think it's spot on. Just think about what Bucky Irving did to that Tampa offense, man. You get that guy that you are terrified if he gets behind, if he gets past that line, and you're like, oh no, I think could go to the house every single time he touches the ball. What else we got? Genty going to the Raiders. Yep, I agree. I think that makes sense. Thank you for your replies. You're welcome. What position do I think I already talked about that? What position do I want at 22? Just give me best player. And if, one of those guys slides, Loveland, T-Mac, Kenneth Grant, Derek Harmon, I'm good with all of them. Zabel, whatever. Mike Green, if you want to go edge, that's a great one. Who wrote that? Brandon? Yeah. If Mike Green slides, I don't think he's gonna. I would be all about building some depth in that edge room as Khalil's on a 1 year. Tuli's going into year 3. Think about Bud Dupree at the last year. Yes, edge is something you want to look forward, right? It's not just about 2025, but it's about the next 5 years with that first round pick. So most definitely, edge could be something they look at. All right, a lot of Keenan. Already have that. Is paying Pip smart? Well, you don't have to pay him, Jim. If you mean, like, do you cut him? It seems like they have the money. $9 million is a lot for a swing, certainly. The only reason why I think you move on from him is if you just find an option that's similar, guard tackle flexibility, that you could save money because you need that money for something else. Otherwise, if you don't need the money, Pip can play right tackle. He did it, in week 18 against Vegas and was fine when Joel had to move over to left tackle when Rashawn got hurt in warm-up. So I think there's value in just keeping him. The only reason why you would move on from him is if something comes up and you need the money and you need to make the room, and bang, here's $9 million. Great. We need that. Let's move it here. Where are we at? Discourse. Trying to find anything else. I think that's some more Pip stuff. So, I think we're pretty good. All the free agents we signed shows their view on the draft, went in on DT. Yeah, I mean, look, you look at what they signed, right? They signed multiple positions. So it's Jackson St. Juste at corner. You got James Bozeman, Becton, interior offensive line, tackles. You brought back Tart, Naquan Jones, Deshaun Hand. You've got your plugger, and then you've got your upfield sort of pass rusher. You brought back, your special teams. Nick Neiman leaves. You make sure you bring back Troy Dye, Delshon Phillips, Jalen Reagor. Special teams, square. Najee Harris, physical back. Tucker Fisk, blocking tight end. Khalil Mack, Taylor Heineke. Now you got your backup tight end. So, yeah, you want to fill with depth as many of those needs. And that's what they were able to do, so you can get into that best player available position. What else we got? Let's see. Did they get Slater's? Okay, I'm at the end. You guys are awesome. Thanks. And just wanted to make sure we acknowledged all of you. So thank you for coming around. We'll be back next week. I think we're going to be able to do this YouTube live thing moving forward. Might not go an hour and 22 minutes. Jeez, we gave you guys a lot for what they give us. We gave you a lot. So thank you. Appreciate y'all, and hope that you have a great week. And we'll be talking about some more signings and maybe even a Slater extension come this time next week. So like, comment, rate, tell your friends about it, all that. A big thank you to Lo. I kept him way too long. We usually like to do these things about 30, 40 minutes. I just happened to have a pretty mellow day today and was in a good mood. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate y'all. We'll see you next week.